A horror movie can be great for one of many reasons. Perhaps it's stylishly directed, cleverly written, brilliantly acted, or in rare cases, all of the above. But at their core, any horror film worth their salt needs to be suspenseful and anxiously tense, to raise the audience's pulse, get them sweating, and create memories they won't ever forget. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie with What Culture here with 10 genius suspense tricks that made horror movies great. Number 10. Never having the Ghostface voice actor meet the cast in Scream. Roger L. Jackson is in many respects the MVP of the Scream franchise, in lending such a distinctly unnerving yet bizarrely alluring quality to the voice of the various Ghostface killers. He's the series' most iconic element, even more so than protagonist Sidney Prescott. Yet Wes Craven made two key decisions from the very first movie which have informed the series ever since. Firstly, Craven had Jackson speak with the movie's actors on the phone for real during shooting, rather than having a crew member speak the lines on set and Jackson dub his version later. And secondly, Craven ensured the cast never actually met Jackson. This guaranteed that the actors could both feel the chilling terror of Jackson's voice while shooting, and by preventing them from putting a face to the voice terrorizing their character, it allowed them to more easily immerse themselves in the situation. In a 2019 interview with Vice, Jackson confirmed that while calling Drew Barrymore in the original movie's opening scene, he was literally crouched outside of her eyeline and watching her, just as Ghostface himself would have been. Jackson added, "I never met any of the actors in the films, but they all knew I was watching them, hidden somewhere nearby. I guess that added this layer of mystery and voyeurism, and it really freaks them out. Remember, I am their biggest fear come to life. It's why they never introduced me to the rest of the cast when filming. They wanted to keep me away so the other actors didn't have a visual image to associate with this weird voice they were hearing." Number 9. Using negative space to imply Adrian's presence in The Invisible Man. Given that filmmaker Lee Whannell had just $7 million to produce The Invisible Man, he was required to get creative and find low-budget solutions for depicting the surging anxiety of facing off against an invisible enemy. Rather than spend most of the budget on complex visual effects sequences, Whannell decided to make expert use of negative space. That is, keeping his camera lingering on seemingly empty spaces within the frame, which are in fact, narratively speaking, occupied by Adrian Griffin, wearing an invisible bodysuit. Even the most casual moviegoer will be subconsciously aware of the rules of cinematic language, namely that the camera follows subjects in the frame. And so, when Whannell doesn't do that, but rather holds on these apparently empty spaces, we immediately know an unseeable entity is residing in the midst. It's a frankly ingenious and very, very budget-friendly compositional trick to make the audience imagine something that can't be shown, and Whannell uses it extensively throughout The Invisible Man's runtime without it ever getting old. Number 8. Having extras constantly following the characters in It Follows. It Follows is a paranoia-laced horror film in which protagonist Jay becomes infected with a sexually transmitted curse, causing an entity to relentlessly pursue her with the ability to resemble literally anybody on Earth. Most of the film's tension stems then from the fact that the entity can be anyone who Jay encounters throughout the story, whether somebody she knows or a total stranger. And director David Robert Mitchell takes perfect advantage of this tantalizing setup by frequently framing Jay with strangers in the background who may or may not be pursuing her. These figures, typically out of focus, are just present enough to rouse doubt and unease in the viewer's mind that they could be the entity all the way up to the movie's final scene, where a figure can be seen walking distantly behind Jay and Paul. Sometimes the simplest tricks are the most effective. In this case, training the audience to be suspicious of just about everybody in the frame. Number 7. Using infrasound to induce anxiety in audiences in Paranormal Activity. If you've ever watched one of the Paranormal Activity movies and appreciated their unique ability to get the hair standing up on the back of your neck, there's a very distinct, calculated reason for it. Filmmaker Oren Peli included a layer of infrasound in the movie's soundscape, an array of low-frequency sound which can't be heard by human ears, yet can nevertheless be subtly perceived as a feeling of awe or fear. Above all else, it typically makes people feel that something odd or otherworldly is happening, and so slyly massaging it into the soundtrack of a horror film certainly makes a lot of sense. While viewers might have noticed a bassy rumble sound during some of the series' middle-of-the-night haunting sequences, infrasound is something different, given that there's no way for us to tangibly hear it. But as intended, we certainly feel it, and it surely played a part in the original film's jaw-dropping $194.2 million box office gross against a mere $230,000 budget. Number 6. Time and budgetary constraints made the cast genuinely nervous in Saw. It's no secret that the original Saw was a seat-of-the-pants production, having been made for just $1 million over a mere 18 days. Due to the shoot's agonizing time constraints, director James Wan simply wasn't able to organize rehearsals with the central cast members, resulting in a nervous, anxious tension on set as the actors largely went in without any warm-up whatsoever. According to Cary Elwes, he and co-star writer Lee Whannell ended up shooting between 12 and 16 pages per day, a huge amount for a Hollywood production. And because the budget was so low, Wan could only afford to film a few takes per camera setup. This, of course, placed a great deal of pressure upon Elwes and Whannell in particular, with Elwes recently confirming to The Hollywood Reporter just how frantic the schedule truly was. He said, "We never sat down. There were no chairs on the set. We never put the camera on a dolly or a tripod. It was on our wonderful cinematographer's shoulder for the entire movie. So when we set up shots, it was like, okay, move the camera here and roll." And yet the scuzzy, sweaty, uncomfortable vibe absolutely transpires through to the final film, which if nothing else absolutely makes you want to take a shower afterwards. Admittedly, this is less a trick than a skilled cast and crew making the best of scant resources, but all the same, it unquestionably informed the phenomenally successful end product. Number 5. Keeping the young cast away from Pennywise actor Bill Skarsgård in It. Andy Muschietti's two-part It adaptation was a mostly pleasant surprise, the first part more so than the second, admittedly, and that's in large part due to Bill Skarsgård's tenaciously terrifying performance as murderous clown Pennywise. But in order to add a further layer of dread to Pennywise's interactions with his young victims, the members of the Losers Club, Muschietti insisted that Skarsgård be kept at arm's length from his teenage co-stars anytime they weren't shooting. The young actors portraying the losers didn't meet Skarsgård at all before shooting started, weren't shown what his Pennywise would look like until filming began, and were kept entirely separate from him between takes. Furthermore, Skarsgård remained largely in character whenever he was around the actors to further keep them on edge. Considering how persuasively terrified the losers are throughout the movie, it was clearly worth placing that barrier between him and everybody else. We can feel the losers' fear on screen, and so it transpires through to us. Number 4. Non-linear editing keeps the audience uneasy in Don't Look Now. Nicholas Roeg's all-timer horror film Don't Look Now would be a powerful tale of grief even were it structured like a more conventional movie. But Roeg's groundbreaking non-linear editing style takes it to a whole other level. Throughout the film, the past, present and future are regularly spliced together without much immediate context for the viewer. This immediately puts the audience on the back foot and leaves them unsure of precisely what they're seeing, just like protagonist John as he begins witnessing bizarre visions he can't quite square. That's because, of course, the movie's ending reveals that John has been seeing premonitions of his own impending death, moments before he's murdered by a serial killer in Venice. Just like John, we think we're seeing an increasingly unsettling array of images in the present, only to later learn that they're flashes of what's to come. But Roeg also utilizes non-linear editing in other ways to throw the audience off, simply by doing something totally unexpected. Even the sex scene between John and his wife Laura is presented in a fragmented style, like viewers have probably never seen before. Ultimately, the editing not only dovetails perfectly into the film's central theme of a man unknowingly seeing his own doomed fate, but is vital in continually jarring the audience and keeping them uncomfortable. Number 3. Hiding Alice's ghost in the background throughout the movie in Lake Mungo. Lake Mungo is one of the scariest horror films of the last 20 years, and here's something that might have slyly unnerved you without you even realizing. The movie's final shot shows a portrait of the Palmer family with the apparent ghost of Alice staring at them from inside the house behind them. A montage then revisits a series of photos shown to viewers throughout the movie, confirming that Alice's ghostly form was secretly hidden in the frame each and every time. While most viewers likely missed these spectral visuals on an initial watch, they certainly made revisiting the film a uniquely creepy experience, encouraging audiences to hit the pause button anytime a photo is shown and frantically scan around the frame looking for Alice. And let's be honest, this is a movie that doesn't need to do anything extra to unsettle the audience after that scene. If you know, you know. Number 2. Using POV shots to lock viewers in Lecter's gaze in The Silence of the Lambs. The Silence of the Lambs is undeniably one of the most suspenseful films ever made, and surely the most gut-wrenching movie to ever win the Best Picture Oscar. Beyond the obvious spine-tingling brilliance of Anthony Hopkins and Ted Levine's performances as Hannibal Lecter and Buffalo Bill respectively though, director Jonathan Demme deployed one special trick to get under the audience's skin: the POV shot. Demme is well known for his use of dramatic close-ups, with characters staring directly into the camera lens, and it's a technique he exploits brilliantly throughout this film, particularly with regard to Hannibal. Countless times we'll be forced to watch as Hopkins stares directly at us while talking to FBI trainee Clarice Starling, at once playing viewers in Starling's shoes and locking us in Lecter's terrifying gaze. Demme also uses this technique for many of the movie's other characters when they speak with Clarice, ensuring we as viewers subconsciously identify with her and truly fear for Clarice during her climactic confrontation with Buffalo Bill. Number 1. Shooting the entire film with a high ISO, Skinnamarink. Without question, the most divisive horror film in recent years is Kyle Edward Ball's experimental Skinnamarink, a low-budget film about two children who wake up in the middle of the night, can't find their father, and are terrorized by a supernatural presence. Skinnamarink is most notable for its incredibly unique, tough-to-place aesthetic, which ensures it offers up a nightmarish vision quite unlike anything else out there. Ball achieved this through one devilishly simple yet highly effective technique, and it's one that 99% of filmmakers would understandably avoid. The film's images contain a high amount of visual noise, creating a texture that makes it feel like we're watching somebody's home video footage, even though Skinnamarink categorically isn't a found footage movie. Ball achieved this by raising the ISO, light sensitivity, of his camera as high as 102,000 while working in low light conditions, creating a highly noisy image reminiscent of old video formats. For context, most Hollywood productions will try to keep the ISO below 800 in most situations, and rather than raise the ISO higher and risk introducing noise, add lights to the scene instead. Yet Ball wanted anything but a crisp image, ensuring that the movie's visual style resembles a nightmare or faded memory from childhood. Love or hate the movie, in terms of pure style, it's a technique that's worked brilliantly. And that concludes our list. If you think we missed something, then do let us know in the comments down below, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also head over to Twitter and follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with What Culture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.